Welcome to the third and final lesson of the 2024 Advent Zoom Bible study. Thanks for being a part of it. Advent is a season of waiting, preparation, and anticipation for the advent of Christ into our lives and into our world. This year's Advent study has been, how does a weary world rejoice? The teaching plan for this study is from Sanctified Art, and the main biblical text have been from the Gospel of Luke. As we look closely at the Advent and Christmas stories that we find in Luke chapter 1 through 3, we've discovered that there's a lot of literal and symbolic darkness and weariness, but at the same time, joy just seems to leap off the pages. The stories of Advent and Christmas teach us that it is possible to have joy even in a weary world. Last week, we focused on Gabriel's visit with Mary, announcing to her that she had been chosen to be the mother of the Messiah. And then we concluded by looking at Mary's visit with Elizabeth, an older relative of Mary's, who also experienced a miracle in regards to her pregnancy in her old age. Her baby would be the forerunner to Mary's. We know Elizabeth's child as John the Baptizer. As the two famous mothers to be met, the joy was just tangible. And in the lesson last week, we also looked at the role of community in helping make space for that joy to happen. Tonight, we focus on the Magnificat, a song of praise from Mary as she responds to Elizabeth's blessing. The Magnificat is a staple of the Christmas story, and since it is voiced before Jesus' birth, it's a great Advent passage as well. Mary said, "My soul proclaims your greatness, O God, and my spirit rejoices in you, my Savior. For you have looked with favor upon your lowly servant, and from this day forward, all generations will call me blessed. For you, mighty one, have done great things for me, and holy is your name. Your mercy reaches from age to age for those who fear you. You have shown strength with your arm. You have scattered the proud in their conceit. You have brought down the powerful from their thrones and raised the lowly to high places. You have filled the hungry with good things, and you have sent the rich away empty. You have come to the aid of Israel, your servant, mindful of your mercy, the promise you made to our ancestors, to Sarah and Abraham and their descendants forever." There's so much to love about Mary's story, and in particular, her song of praise. And of course, we know that no other woman compares to Mary in regards to worldwide fame, and she's been the most famous woman for 2,000 years. But because of that, layers upon layers have been added to the story of Mary, so much that often we forget that she was a poor first century young Jewish woman in Roman occupied Jewish Palestine. The Magnificat takes us back to that Mary. Now, we all love the song, Mary, Did You Know? Did Mary know? The Magnificat answers that question. And the answer is yes, Mary did know. The Magnificat assures us that Mary understood what her pregnancy meant. In her song of praise, she taps into the promises of the Old Testament in regards to the Messiah and the promise of God's rule intervening in this world to make all things right. Mary's song echoes Hannah's song in 1 Samuel 2, in which God is praised for uplifting the lowly and oppressed, and it too recalls the Psalms that celebrate God's victories. Amy Jill Levine, in her book, A Light of the World, points out that when Mary says, "My soul proclaims your greatness, O God, and my spirit rejoices in you, my Savior," she was speaking from her Jewish understanding that salvation meant, and I quote, freedom or release from current circumstances, slavery, poverty, ill health, hunger, and thirst. In her song, Mary is talking about salvation in the past and the present, not about the future. She can feel that salvation in her body, in her soul, in her spirit, and in her womb. She can feel it because she knows that God has looked with favor on the low status of God's servant. End of quote. And we need to remember that the focus of Mary's song of praise is not herself, but it's on God and God's mighty's work and God's promises. God and God's faithfulness are the source of Mary's joy. The good news of the gospel, according to Mary, is mercy for those who revere God, strength for the weak, honor for those who have been shamed, food for the hungry, and fulfillment for those who have trusted God and believed God's promises. As one Christian century commentator put it, the proud are scattered and the humbled honored. The hungry are fed and the rich sent away. The powerful are brought down and the lowly are lifted up. Mary describes a world reordered and renewed, a world so beautifully characterized by love and justice that only the Christ she carries in her womb can birth it into being. End of quote. Now, obviously, a lot of the Magnificat has not been fulfilled because there's certainly a lot of injustice in the world. And it seems that the powerful are even more powerful today. Here's what's important to remember, or at least notice about Mary's Song of Praise. Most of it is in the present tense. This great reversal, this bringing down of the powerful and lifting up of the lowly, is a continuing action of God. Mary's child was just the birth of God breaking into the world to make things right. But it is a process that continues, and it will continue until the day when Christ returns. Mary carried forth Christ into the world. By extension, we too are called to do the same. In regards to this present tense aspect of the Magnificat, Amy Jill Levine writes, quote, "We see the accomplishment of these reversals whenever those who have give to those in need." Notice the present tense. We see it in servant leadership, and we see it in the fidelity to Torah and later to gospel. We see these miracles because as God's children, it is our responsibility to carry them out. As I said just a moment ago, we are to carry forth Christ and his message and his ministry into the world, just as Mary did. As we prepare for Christmas, now just a week away, let's not forget our calling to the world. Let's not forget that we've been called to be active participants of turning things around and setting things right in bringing Christ's salvation and healing, and wait for it, joy to the world. Yes, a weary world can rejoice. And we as followers of the Christ child have a role in making it happen. Now, changing gears, I conclude this Bible study series with a more devotional reflection on the Magnificat from Brian Zahnd in his book, The Anticipated Christ, A Journey Through Advent and Christmas. What we shall learn from the Magnificat is that the grace of God flows downhill toward the lowly places in our lives where we are humble, weak, and poor. There may be places in your life where you are strong, successful, and rich, and this can be a blessing. But be careful and always remember that grace flows downhill. I love that phrase. Grace flows downhill. In our contemporary context, we need a Christianity formed by the Magnificat. In the American superpower, we are typically inclined towards ideologies of success and anthems of strength. But the grace of God does not run uphill toward the pinnacles of success and strength. It rolls downhill toward the low places of humility and trust. Advent is not just about waiting, but about waiting in the right place. What a statement that is. Advent is not just about waiting, but about waiting in the right place. The right place to wait for the grace of God is the lowly ash heap of your barrenness and brokenness. This is where the grace of God, and I'm going to add the joy of God, will appear. Brian Zahnd then asked the question, what ash heaps of barrenness and brokenness in our lives need that downhill flow of God's grace? And that's a wonderful question for all of us to ponder. You know, none of us have it all together, right? So what weak area, what barren area, what broken area in our lives need the joy and the strengthening grace that the Christ child offers to us? Remember, grace and joy flow downhill. As we conclude the Wednesday night Bible studies for 2024, let's reflect on the broken and barren places of our lives that need the downhill grace and joy of God. And then let us renew our commitment to continue the work of the Magnificat in 2025. For it is in God's promises that a weary world can rejoice. Our next Zoom Wednesday night Bible study will be a few weeks away. We'll start up again on January 15th. I invite you to celebrate the final Sunday of Advent this Sunday, December 22nd, at 11 a.m. here at Spirit of the Cross. Then on Christmas Eve, our traditional Christmas Eve service will begin at 6 p.m. Come and be with us if you can. You know, there's just something about being in church on Christmas Eve. So we hope you can make it. Until then, God's abundant grace and peace and joy to you. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.